and she usually is pushing the soft keys and getting us dialed in. So
We got it sorted. That's all that counts.
it's quite the education for me, all this technology.
It's an education for me most of the time. I'm not young anymore, so.
Well, you've got me beat. I'm sure you grew up with a lot of this stuff, or some of this stuff, or at least used it in the last several years. And
the last several years, yeah. But like we were talking about yesterday. I mean, even when my accident happened, none of this stuff was around.
yeah,
YouTube and all of that, all those things that really help share knowledge and help people sort of navigate in ways just didn't exist.
yeah, absolutely. We're getting used to it, though. It certainly is a great tool. It's incredible how we can communicate with the community, with each other, friends, family, and things, and be able to see the faces. It's pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. Well, especially in these times, to
Yeah,
be able to do that. And I mean, I know from a personal standpoint with our kids, and we're the only ones out here in Calgary, so having this technology, getting to see grandparents and things like that has been
yeah,
a huge boost.
it is huge. So very cool. We'll just start a little early. We're a minute early, it looks like, but since we've got the connection and we see each other's faces, we'll just get going. Is that good with you?
That works for me.
All right. So my name is Aaron Holm. I am with Ottobock North America. I am the manager of consumer engagement, and talking today with Chris Cederstrand, connecting to us from Calgary. You and I met, I don't remember if it was in Edmonton or Calgary, Burlington office, which Ottobock's Canadian headquarters are, but I think we were doing a microprocessor controlled knee clinic together. Do you
Yeah.
remember, where was that? Was that in Burlington, or was it
No,
over
I
in,
think it was here in Calgary when we
maybe
first met.
one of the clinical sites or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was trialing one of the foots is what I was
Okay.
doing, a microprocessor knee and a foot, I think.
Got it. Okay. That's got to be 3-4 years ago now, but great to see you again. Um,
Definitely. No.
we've talked a little bit over the years, but your story certainly resonated with me and with everybody that you shared it with that day. You're certainly a survivor, and someone that's taken, like you mentioned yesterday, the lemons with the lemon, making lemonade out of lemons, certainly turned your life, the negative, into an incredible positive. And I'm thrilled to have you here today to be able to kind of share your story with the people that are following us on this social media site today. With that, you want to share your story? I'm curious about your upbringing. Are you born and raised Calgary, or where are you originally from?
No, we're originally from Saskatchewan, so I'm from just a small town just outside of Saskatoon. And
Okay.
most people are probably going to have zero clue where that is, but it's a small little town named Martinsville. And yeah, no, I mean, my upbringing was, much the same as everyone else's. I mean, I'm turned 40 this year, so I'm aging myself a little bit, but it was, hockey in a small town. It was hockey, and I had those aspirations as a kid. There was, my two sort of dreams were to be, a hockey player or a firefighter, and I think that's a pretty common sort of thing for most kids. And luckily enough for me, I really excelled at hockey.
Absolutely. And growing up, you played high school hockey, obviously. What do you start as when you were starting to walk? You basically, parents put some skates on you, probably. That's
Pretty much. I think my dad's got a picture framed. I don't know. I couldn't be more than, 2 or 3, and I got my first pair of skates already. And yeah, you're just, off you go. And hockey up here in Canada is a little bit different. Like, we have our minor hockey. It isn't so much high school hockey, which I think is a little bit more prominent in the States. Like I said, I excelled at it and ended up moving away from home at 14. Went and played AAA midget. I was fortunate enough to get drafted into the WHL up here by the Red Deer Rebels, and was fortunate enough to play some seasons up there, and then unfortunately lost my career due to concussions.
Due to concussions. And what age were you when you started playing with the WHL?
I was 16.
16. Okay. A lot of traveling. I mean, you moved away from home. You probably lived with a host family. Is that how it works, or?
Yeah, they throw you in with a billet family, and yeah, I mean, a lot of traveling, especially in the Western League here. Where you're expanded over essentially 3 provinces or 4 provinces, sorry. So, you know, we're lucky to be a little bit central in Alberta, but, you know, definitely some big road swings, and it's a tough juggle between hockey and school. And, you know, at that point, you're obviously putting a lot of effort into hockey because this is something that potentially, you know, you have an opportunity to make a very good career out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. What a great way to grow up. I mean, independence, incredible amount of independence that you and your players developed early on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, moving away from home that early, probably you know, their rationale for it. And I mean, it works out really well as you sort of learn to kick your own butt, right?
Yeah.
You don't have parents, you don't have people there to really, to drive you. And you need to mature really quick to be able to go out there and do that at a young age and understand that, you know, you need to be very self-motivating and realize that, you know, that's going to be obviously a big portion of your life.
Yeah. Sports does a lot of that for a lot of people. You mentioned your aspiration of playing hockey. You succeeded there. What about the firefighter part of it?
Yeah, once my hockey career sort of came to an end, you know, it was obviously a tough time for me. You know, I had the skill set to move forward, and unfortunately, like I said, you know, I got derailed a little bit, and after a little bit of time of sort of regrouping and figuring out what I wanted to do, it was you know, I decided to be a firefighter. So you know, basically applied to get into the school here, and I mean, they took, I believe at that point it's changed, but they were only taking about 60 firefighters a year, and applied, went through all the tests and all the interviews and got in, and you know, ended up finishing up at the top of my class and moved out to, I was still living in Saskatchewan at the time. And then me and my now wife moved out to Calgary here. She's a teacher, and was just in the process of getting everything going with the Calgary Fire Department, and had just got on out in Sasika here. And yeah, sort of had a turn of events.
Yeah, you mentioned that the skating career was derailed a little bit, and the firefighting career was turned a different direction as well. You want to share your story of the construction accident?
Yeah. So it was just off tour days, and was doing some road construction here in Calgary. You know, it was September 21st, 2005. So anyone from around Calgary here knows that that was sort of the season that we were having floods and everything like that here. And yeah, I was working at Bow and Sarcee here in Calgary. You know, it's basically a very busy intersection, and it's up on quite a big hill is where we were working. And I was backing one of the, you know, 30,000 kilogram packers up Sarcee Trail, and it malfunctioned and slipped out of gear. And ultimately I started going back down that big hill. You know, in an attempt to sort of stop it, I ran it into we were working in the median. You know, I ran it into the side of the median, and it ended up actually jumping up, and I ended up on the road and just continued to pick up speed from that point. And I ultimately ended up having to make a decision. You know, it was I think it was about 5:20 when the accident happened, PM, and very busy intersection, like I said. And I had to make a choice to basically, I could have jumped off the packer there, you know, probably would have had a few bumps and scrapes and bruises. But that packer would have went into a busy intersection and would have probably caused a lot of devastation. And, you know, my other option was to get it back into the median where we were working. And ultimately that's what I decided to do. And just, you know, I basically had to jump it down about a 3-foot sort of drop at that point, and got it back in there. And just as I went to go and jump off of it, it hit a dirt pile. And as I was flying, it flipped and landed on me.
Wow, incredible story. I remember you telling that story, and I think you could certainly hear a pin drop in the room with all those people. It's and we hear a lot of stories from survivors. You certainly are a survivor, and probably saved a lot of people with your actions. And as a result of that accident, you lost your leg above the knee.
Correct. Yeah. They ended up. It's quite a crazy thing. You know, I knew I was in bad shape at that point. I was unfortunate enough to be conscious essentially through the whole process. And I mean, having my firefighting training and my EMT training, like I knew I was in bad shape. And you know, they ended up initially trying to actually save my leg, which I'm glad that it almost didn't work. You know, I mean, the way they sort of stated is I would have ended up with it warm and pink. You know, it wouldn't have been very functional. And You know, I guess this is sort of that silver lining, I guess, that make lemon into lemonades. You know, I guess, you know, my femoral artery blew out while they were trying to do this. And, you know, they just ended up having to do a rush amputation, you know, above the knee. And it was, yeah, I mean, they had me in a medically induced coma for a while, and they basically woke me up for, you know, maybe 5 minutes. I was intubated, and they told me that they had to amputate my leg, and they put me back to sleep. And then about 4 days later, they brought me out of it again and had to start living life with, you know, being an amputee.
Wow, yeah, just an incredible story. Now, any other injuries outside of the limb loss?
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean from that accident or in general?
Well, I know you played hockey, so I know there's
Yeah.
injuries, but and you mentioned concussions is kind of what ended your career there. But with that accident, you said you were conscious of the whole thing. Did you rib damage, any other upper extremity, anything like that?
Yeah, I ended up with a really bad concussion out of it, and I was a little bit banged up and a little bit bruised. I was very fortunate in the way that the Packer landed on me, and it literally just hit my right leg.
Okay.
You know, the unfortunate side of things is how they initially approached it, and they wanted to try and save my leg. So they were doing a ton of vein transplants and, you know, trying to pull stuff out of my good leg that hadn't been affected. And, you know, ultimately they ended up causing a bunch of nerve damage. And, you know, I have an incision that basically goes almost from the bottom of my knee to my belly button, where they were pulling veins out. And, you know, they had done a fair bit of damage on that good leg, which, you know, I just sort of wish they would have
Yeah.
amputated you know, to start with, and I wouldn't have had the issues.
Yeah. And how long was it from the initial injuries until amputation?
Oh, it was immediate. Like
Okay.
basically
Okay.
they had brought me, you know, I thought I was a goner. You know, they loaded me
Yeah.
up in the ambulance, and I finally had started passing out due to blood loss, and, you know, gave them the old spiel, tell my wife I love her. And yeah, they rushed me to the hospital and basically brought me right into surgery. And you know, they started working on this, and then, like I said, it just, you
Yeah.
know, it was within that few hours, you know, they were
Okay.
working on it, and you know, it just, like I said, it would have, I just wish it would have been an instant amputation opposed to
Sure.
the route
Sure.
that it went.
Yeah. What did rehab look like for you? I mean, you're a very busy guy. You're still skating, I'm sure. Staying in shape, working out, working construction. You probably had a routine that you and your family, your wife had gotten into, and then all of a sudden, you know, this changes, flip of a switch, as we've heard many times.
Yeah, it was a pretty big change. You know, at that point, unfortunately, here in Calgary, like, we didn't even have a physiatrist here, somebody that was really overseeing all, you know, all these people with significant injuries and amputations and things like that. And I sort of just got thrown into a physio clinic. And, you know, my physio, and I mean, she did the best that she possibly could. I mean, she'd never dealt with an amputee before. And so it was definitely a bit of a struggle for quite some time, just going through the rehab. And then, just due to the way that my leg was crushed, I was having a lot of trouble with prosthetics to start with. You know, just massive volume changes and things that I still deal with today. But you know, my prostheticist was an older guy and really stuck in his way. And, you know, he really wouldn't look outside the scope of what he was used to doing. And, you know, I alluded, or we were talking about it a little bit before this started. You know, just YouTube and the internet and all that kind of stuff just wasn't really there yet. You didn't get to see all these crazy, you know, new things that people are doing with
Right.
sockets and
Right.
everything that way. So, you know, being brand new to it, you know, you're just going with the flow, right? You don't think anything of it. And I mean, it was actually weird. I didn't even get a chance to choose my prostheticist. They just sent somebody to the hospital for me. And obviously it's something you don't ever think of. You know,
Right.
you're just going, oh, okay, well, maybe there's just one of these guys in town, and this is the guy that everyone deals with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a long struggle getting a leg that fit properly and worked well for me.
Yeah, you do take a lot for granted early on. You just kind of assume that you go through certain steps, certain motions for that desired outcome. But you learn quickly to take it upon yourself and identify who is going to work with you towards your desired outcome. And you went for it. That's cool, and that's a great lesson to a lot of people. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are new to this world that'll tune in to this session today or watch this video in the future, and that's definitely a a lesson for all. So rehab, you're lifting weights, you're waiting for those first steps. So going back, I'm backing up a little bit here. What did you do? Did you get to the gym? Did you do a lot of
Oh,
things at home or everything?
I was crazy. I mean, I was, they were taking me down into into the hospital gym just to do your initial rehab there. And, I'm coming from a high performance sport background and firefighting, where obviously being in shape is a very crucial thing. And, I'm asking if I can start lifting weights already, if I can
Sure.
get in there and do what I can. And, that was such a big part of my life for so long that, having that little bit of normality back with being able to do that was definitely it was a soothing thing for me at that time. Because, there are so many unknowns. I went, you go from being, like I said, an athlete and a firefighter to all of a sudden initially can barely get up and go to the bathroom yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, all those massive changes, it was finding those things that I was able to do and have that little bit of normality back in my life. It just made a huge difference. But I'm crazy that way. So I just, I like to
No,
push the limits on things.
that's good. And your practitioner, once your time to be fit with a prosthetic device, they probably absolutely love seeing you come in because you're motivated and you're in shape. You've taken care of yourself and you're ready to go. And that's important. And that certainly helps them as well. You got back on the ice pretty quick in another fashion per se, being introduced to sledge hockey. How were you introduced to sled hockey?
It was one of those things. I'd sort of seen it. I mean, it had been a few years since my accident, and sledge hockey. You sort of, we were talking about it when we just talked yesterday. You sort of go two different. There's like the far left and the far right. There's the that's cute factor, and there's the holy crap factor. And unfortunately, the first time I saw sledge hockey, it was I was just like, no. I don't want anything to do with it. It just, coming from that high performance background, it was just, I ended up getting involved in a few other sports. And then ultimately, there was another gentleman here that played in the Western Hockey League as well, by the name of Kieran Block, that had an accident and ended up really damaging one of his legs. And he brought me out to a World Sledge Challenge here in Calgary. And, I saw it. It took me all of like 30 seconds. I saw these guys hit the ice, and all of a sudden you're just going, holy crap. Like this is legit. I mean, it's violent. It's got it's pretty much got everything that you can ask for. And I mean, I know you've played a lot of sled hockey, as you call it, down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's you see what our national team players can do now. And I mean, when you got guys firing the puck 80 miles an hour, and the speed that we're moving at now, it was just a no-brainer to get back into it. And I basically saw that and jumped to found out where I could play it here in Calgary and got into a sled. And I believe that was it was the end of November of 2011. And by January of 2012, I was already invited to play with our national development program. Okay.
And how far did you take it?
I was fortunate enough to play with their national team for a few years, and just got to go to some worlds. I was an alternate for the Sochi Paralympics. I accomplished a fair bit in a reasonably small amount of time. And then unfortunately at Worlds in 2015, I racked up my shoulder. You were asking about what injuries. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I'm the only guy actually ever to blow his knee out playing sledge hockey.
That's probably true.
It's probably true. Yeah. That was one of my first, second series against the States. I had a ref fall on me off a face-off and hyperextended my good leg. So few knee surgeries later, I'm dealing with that. But no, I ended up being able to take that pretty far, and unfortunately, blew my shoulder out and rehabbed it and came back, and everything was looking great. And then just before Pyeongchang, I ended up blowing it out again.
And you were named captain, correct?
Yeah, I was a captain of our national development team.
That's fantastic. That's
then,
leadership.
That was a huge feather to have in your cap. I mean, to be wearing that jersey and to have a C put on it is something that, I mean, I'm sure it's, any hockey player dreams of playing for your nation, but, to be named a captain or an assistant captain or whatever it is, that's just a, you know, another big feather in your cap, because it's, you know, I think it proves what kind of character and personality you have.
Absolutely. Discipline. And speaking of discipline, going back to your firefighting days, you did something pretty cool that's probably never been done before. Why don't you share that story with it?
Yeah, in 2012, you know, I had my fire instructor when I went through school became the MD, or became the chief of our MD, and he called me up one day and just asked me, he's like, "Hey, Chris, do you want to be a firefighter again?" And I mean, you know, it took me about probably half a second, and it was a yes. And it was, you know, out of all the stuff that I've been able to accomplish, you know, post accident, even pre accident, you know, this was probably one of the hardest journeys that I've had to sort of navigate. You know, I was fortunate enough to have you guys at Ottobock really get behind me and help out with legs, and you know, get me the equipment that was required to do it. And I was really just sort of making my way through it, because we had researched it, and at that time there had been nobody that we could find that had become a frontline firefighter again. And through a lot of hard work and determination, and like I said, blowing up quite a few Geniums and X3s, you know, I had to go through and do everything that an able-bodied person has to do for our physical test. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to become the first above knee amputee firefighter in North America.
Unbelievable. What were some of the steps or the tests that you had to go through wearing the microprocessor knee? I mean, you said everything you did prior when you were certified, but steps, I'm sure you're carrying heavy weights.
Oh yeah, you've got your turnout gear, I mean, you're carrying, yeah, you're doing rise packs, you're doing absolutely everything. You're having to do, you know, you're having to do lunges as part of it with a hose pack, you know, over your shoulder, and then you got your turnout gear and everything else on. So I mean, you've got an additional probably, you know, 120 pounds of weight on you on top of that. And you're having to do stairs, and you're having to do, you know, do these lunges and do hose pulls, and, you know, basically everything that's required, forcible entry, all those type of things. And so it was quite it was a daunting task, learning how to do all that again, and do it proficiently. Right. I mean, it was one of those things, you know, some of the stuff the way I had to do it looked unorthodox, but, you know, I was able to do it safely, and I was able to do it, you know, fortunately enough for me, faster than able-bodied people. So
yeah, and you were selected, and a lot of able-bodied people that were in the same test that you weren't selected. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
yeah, it was definitely something that, you know, I take a lot of pride in, you know, and then I was even able to take that one step further. And you know, for anybody that's in the fire industry, or, you know, up here in Canada, it's on TSN all the time, but there's the Firefit challenge, which is just an absolute grueling sort of, you know, it's literally a firefighter challenge where you're doing all the facets of firefighting. You got a 4-story climb, you got a hose pull, you got to be carrying up a high-rise pack, all this stuff. And I was the first above knee amputee firefighter to compete in that as well.
Well, congratulations. That's really, really a cool story. Fast forwarding a little bit here, you've become sort of a mentor, not even sort of a mentor for one young man that was whose life changed a few years ago. Is it Ryan Strasnitzky?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll just call him Straz. It's so much easier.
Yeah, that's a last name, but I'm sure everybody remembers this. But Ryan played for the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team, and was involved in the bus accident, the horrific accident that involved the hockey team's bus and a large truck. I believe the team was going to a game or a tournament or something.
Yeah, they were going to a playoff game.
And they collided with a semi-truck, a very large truck. 16 people in the bus were killed, and 13, including Ryan, suffered serious injuries. Just an incredible story. It resonates with me. Both of my boys play hockey, and when this news came out, same age as my oldest son was at the time, and to see what you're doing with Ryan today, and to hear an update on this horrific story and what's come out of it with this guy and what you're doing, is so cool. So please share that and how you came to meet him and where you're at.
No, I was, you know, obviously when that accident happened, it deeply affected the hockey community. And, you know, for anybody, especially that's played junior hockey, I mean, the amount of time that you spend on a bus, and I mean, really for anybody, I think you know, that's why it was such a huge story. And it really just, you know, it superseded hockey. Everyone sort of got behind it, is just because who isn't riding on a bus. But, you know, there were a lot of parallels between mine and Ryan's story. And I was, you know, fortunate enough to be able to reach out and get a hold of his parents. And, you know, he let me come and visit him in the hospital. And that was just sort of the start of, you know, a really great relationship. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to be a big part of his life in that sense, and getting him just, you know, acclimated to the way that, you know, life does change in that facet. And I mean, he's a T1 paraplegic. So I mean, he has quite a high injury level. But I you know what, I can't say enough incredible things about this young man. You know, you know, in my story, it took me a long time to sort of get life sorted out and, you know, get back into what I love doing. And we have, you know, Straz was, you know, I met him when they moved him back here to Calgary to Foothills Hospital. And, you know, the accident happened in April. And I mean, obviously a very, very significant accident. And we had him in a sled in July. You know, just a truly unbelievable feat. And I mean, like I said, I can't say enough. You know, this kid's character and willpower are just, it's almost, you know, just unprecedented. And over the last few years, we've just, you know, he's a kid that's, you know, it shows what hard work does. You know, where the amount of time he puts into physio, we're on the ice 4 or 5 times a week, we're in the gym, you know, and he has just progressed at a crazy level. And, you know, to the point where this year I'm fortunate enough to help coach our provincial team here in Alberta. And, you know, he was able to make our provincial team already. And,
Wow.
you know, you're talking about some elite level, you know, this is all mainly national and development team guys. And, you know, 2 years in and his level of injury, and, you know, he's able to play at this level. You know, he's still learning and he's still putting in the time, but, you know, our goal is to get him to 2026 at the Paralympics there. And, you know, I have no doubt that, you know, given his work ethic and what he's been able to do, you know, we're going to get him there.
Wow. What, you know, I was thinking to myself how lucky he is to have met you and to have a mentor in you, but how lucky it is for both of you guys. I mean, this is a life experience that both of you guys are gonna benefit from. Very similar experience, very similar lifestyles growing up, I'm sure, and the connection is very solid.
Oh, and that's it. Like I said, there were a lot of parallels. You know, when you're playing junior hockey here in Canada, the amount of work and the amount of effort that goes into it, and to be able to pass on some of my knowledge to him, especially through the rehabilitation process, because that does get to be a grueling process. And, you know, what we've been able to sort of curb a little bit for Ryan was one of my biggest stumbling blocks is, you know, as we talked about moving away from home early, you learn to kick your own butt. And I mean, you really get this, you know, tough hockey player exterior, and you learn to beat yourself up essentially when things don't go right, and so that you're able to turn around and fix things. And, you know, speaking to that from a rehabilitation side, it probably was the most detrimental thing that I had happen to me. Just because you know, in any rehab, you're going to have this massive incline of progress and steps and steps and steps. And then things sort of plateau a little bit. Right. Yeah. And you just know you're not seeing those rapid steps just continue to go past. And I mean, one of my biggest issues was I just started beating myself up. You know, why am I not progressing? Why am I not progressing? And I mean, ultimately you end up digging yourself into a hole, and, you know, depression and all these other things start to set in. And, you know, with Ryan, we've been fortunate enough to really be able to, you know, to work ourselves around that. So he's not getting stuck in that loop, because he very much has that same attitude where it's just, you know, he needs to be dialed back sometimes. He thinks that, you know, there were times where it was, you know, it was like volume of skating opposed to quality of skating. right? And
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if you're not having quality on the ice, what are you really, skating and being exhausted and not being able to do anything, especially for Ryan getting on the ice so quick
right.
after the accident. You're asking a lot of a guy that's been playing on the national team for 20 years to skate 5 times a week, let alone a guy that's still dealing with, 3 to 4 hours of physio a day and just adapting to life. And then he wants to train, you know, 5 hours a week on the ice and be in the gym. And so it was good to be able to help him out from that facet. And then just, living life in general, living
Yeah,
life with a disability, you learn to find those silver linings and things, and you learn to find the challenges in it. Things might not necessarily be done the same way they were before you had, regardless of what your injury was. But if you can get that mentality that you accept everything as a challenge, and you can go out there and beat these challenges, it's extremely rewarding. And I mean, you get to do some absolutely amazing things.
yeah, absolutely. Well, best to him and you for helping him out. And I can't wait to see him skate. And obviously he'll do very well and has a great mentor in you. Today a little bit, let's talk about the Cederstrand Foundation. You and I talked, I think 3 years ago, you were starting to get it going, getting it rolling a little bit, and caught up a little bit on it yesterday. But tell me a little bit about the foundation, the organization that you're managing.
Yeah, or my foundation is there to help people get re-immersed in sport, and it doesn't just deal with amputees. It's whoever it is, and or whatever your injury is, and whether it's whether you need a wheelchair, wheelchair for basketball or rugby, or you need a running leg, or whatever the case may be. We're sort of here to help bridge that gap and get you involved with local groups. I'm fortunate enough. I have my hockey school, and we've been, able to run this completely free for kids. We have sleds, we got everything. And so we're able to get, kids out playing hockey at no cost. And yeah, we're working on that. And then as you sort of find your sport, our next step is going to be to help you out with these equipment, with getting equipment. Because as you know, adaptive equipment is not cheap.
Right.
And, it's not like buying, a kid, a pair of shoes and a basketball and taking them out to a court and play. You're looking at a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 wheelchair and a basketball, and, or in running legs. I mean, I'm fortunate enough. I've got a whole closet full of legs. But to go out and run again, that was such a freeing thing for me to be able to go out there and do something that I obviously did a lot through my life. But you're looking at a pretty significant cost just to go out there and have that piece of active lifestyle back.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're fortunate enough to have that up and going and working with some amazing groups to, with the hockey school. And I know that Ottobock has got behind me on this, and, to be able to get people back into sport and become active again, because it is such a, not just a thing physically, but a thing mentally that helps people out, regardless of what your disability is. To be able to get out and be active again is such a huge role, plays a huge role in people's recovery.
Yeah, and we've in previous sessions we've talked a lot about sport and how it bridges the gap to everything else in life, to a career, to relationships and things like that, and how great it is to be active, especially people like you and I who are dependent on a prosthesis. It fits a lot better when you're able to keep an active lifestyle, a workout, some get the blood flowing per se. So absolutely, it's great, and it's great what you're doing, and it's great to know that you're in contact, which I know you're in contact with the team in Burlington or the team in Canada. And let's continue to talk and see what we can do more to help you and your organization. How do people get involved? How do people get in touch with you?
I have my website, chriscederstrand.com. And we have a foundation piece on there, and we're just in the process of developing, the application piece right now, so that we can sort of get people vetted for this. And, if you're just looking for info on how to get into sport, I mean, we've got a lot of contacts, as far as that goes. We can help you start bridging that gap. And then, as you find a sport that you absolutely love, then we can start working at helping you out with, with equipment and getting you reimbursed in that. I mean, you're a sledge hockey player, you know. I'm going to call it sledge, by the way.
Yeah, for people who are viewing this, in the United States, for some reason, we call it sled, and in Canada, they call it sledge. And what does the rest of the world do? I mean,
and then they just, the IPC just rebranded it as para ice hockey.
Para ice hockey, still sledge and sled, I think.
Yeah, it's just there's so many different terms for it. It's crazy, but I mean, you know what it's like. I'm sure when you got into a sled for the first time and you're using one of the starter sleds, you know, that compared to a sled that's built for you makes you know, it's a world of difference. And I mean, you know, that translates over to a lot of sports, right? I mean, whether you're playing basketball or rugby or whatever it is, when you've got something that's designed for you, it you know, it just makes life that much easier, and it makes the enjoyment of the sport just that much more.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to, let's you and I talk again a little bit more and learn about the foundation. I'll connect with our team in Canada and make sure that we're doing everything we can to make that a success up there, because you're helping out a ton of people, and we certainly want to be part of that. But you know, I try to keep up with the scrolling that's going on, and I see people reaching out and saying hello, great work, and giving you kudos. I think you got a big support system that are following you on this call today. So be sure to check back with that. I didn't see any any questions that need to be addressed right now, but we certainly can circle back with that. But I can't thank you enough for taking your time today, sharing a piece of your life with us, and you know, an incredible story, and you've come a long ways, and you're helping motivate and inspire others. So thank you very much. We appreciate all you do.
No, thank you for having me, Aaron. This was an absolute honor to be able to come on here and chat with you. And I mean, it's amazing what you guys do. And I mean, I know you have your Wiggle Your Toes Foundation that you've got going. And I mean, I follow that. And I mean, I you know, hope to one day that I can, you know, help people like you're able to help people out.
Well, let's work together on that and keep helping people. But best to you, your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll see you in person. Not on the ice, but in person.
Oh, come on. I'm a nice guy on the ice.
All right, buddy.
Oh, that sounds great, Aaron.
You have a good weekend.
You as well.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.